Oh, here.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our today's session, where you will learn more about how Porsche accelerates their cloud journey together with AWS. And first of all, I have to admit, I have always been a huge Porsche lover. So I always wanted to have a 911, and I'm really thinking I'm not the only one here in this room with this desire. And recently, I've seen a video on social media that made me even more enthusiastic about that brand and their cars. So I've seen the cucumber test. And let me explain to you what that means. So you literally take a whole cucumber, you go to your car, and then you go to the back of your car, you open the back door, and then you put the cucumber between the space of the car and the open back door. Then you push the button in order to get the door shut again. So apparently this only works if you have an electric back door at your car. And then the door comes down, and usually it should recognize that there is an object in between and should go up again. And I can tell you, in that video I've seen, there were so many cars failing that test. So they either cut the cucumber completely off, or they crashed it, whatever. But one of the cars that made the test was the Porsche Cayenne. And then I was like, okay, hey, wow, my customer is really following AWS leadership principle #1, which is customer obsession. And they also follow one of our most important artifacts, which is security. And I think it's no surprise that an OEM that is building high-performant, high-quality cars is aiming the same for their IT infrastructure. So that's why I'm really happy to have two wonderful colleagues with me here today who will explain to you how they set up high-efficient, high-performing cloud infrastructure at Porsche. My name is Verena Kutzovagilis. I'm a Customer Solutions Manager at AWS, and I'm taking care of all of the Porsche migration projects. And I have with me today Alexander Frey, who has more than 10 plus years of experience at Porsche. He's currently working as a principal program lead at Porsche, taking care of the Prem to Cloud program. And he has been before at very different departments already, so like HR, R&D. Now he is within the IT department, so he knows really where the challenges at Porsche are. And I have Erik Stach with me today, who is currently a tech lead at Porsche, being responsible to set up technical standards together with his team for other Porsche teams. He has 10 plus years of experience within software development and cloud architecture. And actually, he came in to help Porsche accelerate setting up their cloud infrastructure. And yeah, very happy to have you here with me today on stage. Come and join me, and happy presenting you two.
Thank you, Verena, for the short introduction. And today we want to cover two main topics here at our breakout session. At first, we will show you some insights of the challenges and experiences with our cloud strategy. And furthermore, we will present our Cloud Transition Accelerator, a special program to accelerate the migrations. And at the second topic, Eric will show you our technical cloud migration patterns and the experienced challenges during the introduction and the resolutions we have found in that case. And I think everybody knows the company Porsche with the iconic 911 Carrera. But before we dive deeper into technology, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture, our vision. Porsche is the brand for those who follow their dreams. And that doesn't only apply to our customers, it applies to our employees, our partners, and to the technology we build up. And our cloud transformation is a big key enabler for this vision. It gives us the freedom to innovate, the speed to respond to change, and the resilience to act globally. And whether it's powering a real-time 3D car configurator, or enabling over-the-air updates, or supporting AI-driven development, cloud is the foundation for that. And when we talk about the Vision 2030, we are not just talking about only the strategy. We are talking about building a digital ecosystem that's iconic and high performance as the Porsche brand itself. And now let's rewind the clock about 6 years. At Porsche, we launched our first cloud initiative called Cloud First Strategy 6 years ago. And the idea was simple. Let's move fast, scale globally, and unlock innovation by building in the cloud wherever possible. And we even had a split in mind, 70% cloud, 30% on-prem. And on one side, we had Cloud City, shiny, modern, full of promise. And on the other side, on-prem Valley, a bit dusty, but still very much alive. I think sounds reasonable, right? Like a well-balanced diet, just with fewer servers and more scalability. And the benefits were clear, you know it: speed, resilience, security, efficiency, you name it. But as all we know in IT, the road from vision is rarely a straight line. And let's have a look to our first approach of our cloud strategy. As you can see here, we have two different groups: new application and existing applications. And on spoiler alert, it didn't go quite as planned. We had the beautiful vision in that case. New applications would be born in the cloud, and existing ones would gracefully migrate over. But in reality, it looked more like these new applications that we had no problems. They were cloud native from day one. And that's why they started directly in Cloud City. It was a no-brainer. But what happened with the existing applications? They were more a bit stubborn. We did have some brave pioneers. They started to migrate over and use the advantages of cloud technologies. But what happened with the rest? I think most of them stayed in on-prem Valley, like guests who didn't get the memo that the party had moved. And what have been our experiences in that? We learned a lot from this phase. Cloud adoption for new apps, that was a clear no-brainer. And for existing apps, there was no aligned migration roadmap. Many servers remained in our data centers, and even after partial migrations. And that's why we ended with a hybrid landscape in that case. And in short, we needed a new approach, one that was bolder, clearer, and more enforceable. And when you have a look to our strategy 2030 plus, we have different cross functions defined, especially in regard of transformation and security, sustainability, the carbon footprint reduction, to enhance the or to push forward the road to 20, which need more speed and efficiency. And that was the reason why we made a bold shift. We moved to a cloud-only strategy to use the typical cloud advantages we have already seen on the slide before. And that's why we have defined, no. So that's why we have defined our cloud-only strategy, which is called, by 2030, we will have all of our digital solutions in the cloud and no on-premises solutions at all. And that's combined with a very restrictive cloud on-prem exception process, because we know there will be some exceptions. But the idea is to have nearly 100% by 2030, and that's our target and the way to go. And yeah, that's the major transformation, and it's one we are fully committed to. And the question now is how we bring our cloud-only strategy to life. We knew that simply declaring a strategy wasn't enough. We needed a structured and measurable and scalable approach. And first, we implemented lifecycle trigger, and that's our technical milestones of our on-prem platform with no successor in place. That should be enforce the aligned migration roadmaps, and the end-of-life dates are the latest possibility to complete the cloud migration. Second, we have hard-defined KPIs, defined reduction rates of our on-prem resources, and we are measuring and reporting them in our on-prem footprint reduction dashboards as well. And third, we have initiated the cleanup of our data centers. For examples, migration projects are responsible to clean up their on-prem footprint after migration, combined with a cashback model. It sounds crazy, but often we had the problem that we had a hybrid landscape. Some parts of the on-prem applications have been migrated to the cloud, but there was still a rest of virtual machines in the data center, and we couldn't reach the efficiency we wanted to realize with our cloud migration strategy. And the last point is that we have focused on processes and roles. Luckily, we had the chance to introduce our SAFe organization at Porsche. That means that we have an agile approach for the DevSecOps operation model, which is very good in combination with our cloud migration strategy. Furthermore, we had our enterprise architects for different IT portfolios, which are working as a multiplicator for our cloud strategy, which helps us much to push it forward. And of course, we defined mandatory trainings, especially for our cloud strategy and the referring cloud migration strategy, which is mandatory for everybody who is running an IT application at Porsche. And this all four success factors are combined with our principles. The first one is competitive IT products should always consider to use the buy and integrate model, which is nothing else than using a software as a service wherever it is possible. And for all other cases, we have still the approach, you build it, you run it, you own it, and this in combination with the DevSecOps model. And in that case, we are not using a central migration factory approach or something like that. It's a little bit different than other companies are doing that. And yeah, to truly scale out our cloud transformation, we needed more than just a strategy. We needed a structured and hands-on program to support and accelerate migrations across the organization. And that's why we have introduced our Cloud Transition Accelerator, which is divided in 4 different patterns. At first, we have our scale-up budget, which is a centrally managed budget for all transformations, and especially reserved for the cloud migration. And we have combined it with cloud migration consulting to speed up the cloud migrations very fast, because we have experienced that otherwise it would take too much time before they start with migrations, and they will to do too many POCs and so on. And second, we have introduced our migration patterns. The idea behind that is to have centrally developed migration patterns to speed up the migrations with reusables, and Eric will tell you some details about that later. And these two parts we have combined with our migration program, because the idea is when we have our migration projects, we have always some resources which are running in parallel, and that was a good chance, together with AWS and the MAP program, to reduce the cloud consumption costs as well during the migration phase. And the last building block in that case was or is the cashback model, because the idea is we want to reduce our on-prem resources very fast, and that means every migration project which has dismantled their virtual machines, they will get a cashback directly on their project budget, and they can reuse it for the cloud consumption, which will be reused in the future in that case. And then we have a shift from central managed on-prem resources directly to IT portfolio-based projects in that case. But these four parts are not all of that cloud transition accelerators. We have added some another base modules in that case. Every car needs a drivetrain, and for a cloud migration topic, it's very important that we have partners on board which have the right expertise for cloud migration as well. That's why we have a defined framework agreement with selected and professional partners, which help the different IT portfolios to start very quick with the cloud migrations, and that they can realize that on time. And for some special cases, we have also a cloud migration enablement team, which helps to start very fast with the cloud migrations, directly with hands-on migration, of course. And the last point here on the lower right is our track and adapt. I've already mentioned it. KPIs are a very important thing to have the overview and the overview of the progress of the cloud migration topic, and that's why we have clearly defined KPIs in place, which have been reporting in the different councils of our IT department, and that combined with our monthly pulse meeting, which is a meeting together with all product owners who are running actually a cloud migration, and where we have the chance to identify very early roadblockers or issue patterns where we can find very quick resolution with the involved cross functions. And that's the idea of our cloud transition accelerator. And now I will hand over to Eric, who will give you some insights about the cloud migration patterns.
Yes. Thank you, Alex. Okay, so now you heard from Alex how to do this on a business level, and I will show you how we enable all of these cloud migrations on a technical level. Because in the end, we always have on-premises systems, we have our cloud target infrastructure, and what comes in between. We need something which can migrate these resources fast and in a secure way. And for this, we implement so-called migration patterns. So let's talk first about the three different aspects we have to consider when migrating infrastructure. The first one is we have on-premises, of course, and here we don't want to change the on-premises systems at all, if possible. Yeah, so we don't want to install a lot of software on these on-premises machines. We basically want to minimally, in a minimally invasive way, migrate those systems to the cloud. Then the second type of infrastructure is the transitional one, and this will only be built up during the migration. So it will be deployed, then you, for example, have a database migration service in AWS, and after you're done, you decommission everything. And this transitional infrastructure needs to be cost effective, of course, and secure, because you don't want to lose data in the transition. And the last part, the most important one here, is the cloud, the target architecture, because without it you wouldn't have a goal, right? And this one needs to be secure, cost effective, in the best case even cheaper or not so pricey like the on-prem maintenance cost, and it needs to be simple. Yeah, so we try to not use Kubernetes, but more like the managed ECS clusters, for example, and it needs to be future-proof, so we can easily implement or add AI technology on top of our architectures. And one really important learning we had during evaluating all the tools that are available also from AWS is that we don't want to deploy on-premises servers to migrate on-premises servers, right? Because if you deploy them, it might be difficult to get rid of them again, and then your on-premises landscape doesn't shrink. So what is a migration pattern on a high level? It's basically a single source to target mapping. Yeah, so you could have on-premises, you could have an Oracle database, and in AWS you use Amazon Aurora, or you want to migrate a virtual machine, and in the best case you do a refactoring and directly create a containerized version and run it on ECS, for example. And it would be easy if we wouldn't have any constraints, right? We have a lot of security policies at Porsche, like every company probably has. And we want to make sure that our systems are secure by design, and that these migration patterns, since they will be used a lot of times by all kinds of projects, they need to implement these security policies. So for this, we utilize shift left in CI/CD. So we have some build time security scanners, which are configured in a way to cover our security policies. And also we use a runtime security scanner, for example, Prisma Cloud, to make sure that even in the runtime, it's still everything compliant. And in this time, the runtime is even the transitional phase where we deploy the transitional infrastructure just to migrate something else. So it needs to be secure all the time, not just in the target scenario. So our Porsche security policies are pretty broad, and they don't talk about individual cloud services like S3. So what we did for our teams is basically take these security policies and create what we call a building block as documentation for each AWS service. So when someone wants to implement a service in the cloud, they can take a look at the building block as documentation and know exactly how to configure it according to our security policies. But this was still not very efficient, because people will deploy their resources using Terraform, for example. So we then went on and created building blocks as code, which basically implement these security policies directly in Terraform. I'm sure a lot of you have already done something similar. And now the final part, which helps our projects move faster, is what we call architecture as code, which is basically infrastructure as code, but with a lot more considered. For example, in this case here, you can see we have a infrastructure which is shown in a simplified way, which hosts ECS Fargate. You have a database, and on top you can see Entra ID, and this is essential because you can find all kinds of templates on the internet to deploy this kind of stuff, but you have to make sure that your engineers in your company and your consultants actually can implement things quickly in your environment. And for that, we provide special plugins, which can easily be plugged into this infrastructure. So these cross-cutting concerns like authentication, observability, and so on, they don't have to re-implement it every time. And of course, we use GitLab and other CI/CD tools to deploy everything automatically to make it auditable. So let's come back to what the technical cloud migration pattern actually is. So basically, it contains a lot of these Terraform modules, right? So you can just deploy the transitional architecture, you can deploy the target architecture, but it also contains all of the CI/CD pipelines that are required. And then not everyone is an engineer, right? We have other people at our companies, like product owners, architects, and they need different kinds of documentation. So if I'm a product owner and I want to know how much my migration will cost, then I can take a look at the budget planning and time planning. We have the architecture diagrams, everything you know as an architect. And of course, deployment guides for the engineers, because someone has to do it in the end. And these deployment guides are very important for making it as quick as possible. So one example for a complete migration pattern would be, maybe you have an on-premises server running Tomcat and Linux, and then you think, okay, I want to migrate to ECS Fargate. So what you see now here is the target architecture, even more simplified, but this would already be an architecture as code. And now you think, okay, but how can I do this transition quickly? And every project will have to think about this, right? So we create this ephemeral architecture for all of the transitional resources. And this is also basically an architecture as code. And we have these cross-cutting concerns covered. So projects can quickly add authentication to their architecture. And also, we have a lot of these plugins to add, for example, a database quickly. And yeah, as I said, everything is architecture as code, and we manage it through GitLab and GitHub as well. And what was missing in the picture, the engineer, because when you have all these templates and everything, someone has to take them and actually apply them. So on the right side, you can see what we call an architecture assembly guide. So for every architecture as code, we have a really thorough, easy to understand documentation, which an engineer can follow to set up the individual architectures that are required. And then we have the migration pattern usage guide, which is specifically for the migration. Because the target architecture, you can also use it for developing new applications in the cloud, right? But the migration pattern usage guide specifically considers how to migrate the resources. Okay, and now we have all of these migration patterns, but they didn't come from nowhere. Of course, we had some engineering challenges in the way. Probably a lot of you already know this comic from XKCD. So in the earlier days, as a programmer, I always thought, why is this compiling taking so long? But at least compiling is most of the time deterministic. And here, what we found out when we developed these infrastructure templates is that now the developers are waiting for the infrastructure deploying, which is most of the time even taking more time and is less deterministic. So how do we handle these longer deployment types? Of course, you have to consider concurrent deployments. So you need a lot of isolated environments. You shouldn't do everything in one account. When you have development branches, every branch will deploy its own infrastructure. If you don't do this, then it will take much longer to develop anything. Then we have quota limits. Fortunately, AWS solves these quota limits very fast when you contact them. But when you first start out, then you will hit these limits naturally. For example, you will have too much VPCs in one account, and then it won't work anymore, right? And the solution for that one is basically we do a lot of monitoring for making also sure on the cost side that we don't spend too much, basically, right? Because if you deploy the same Terraform infrastructure 100 times, it will cost you money. And also the segregated environments. If you have multiple accounts, you don't hit these limits as fast. Then the final thing is the bugs that you will encounter. Of course, they can be in your own Terraform code, but also in the Terraform provider. And most of the time, this is the point where you go to GitHub and open an issue, right? Because you don't develop the provider on your own. And they can also be in the AWS API. So to solve issues quickly, you really have to be systematic in performing your root cause analysis. And what we also started using recently is some AI coding assistance in our IDE to prevent mistakes before we deploy them. Then one more difficulty is to hit the sweet spot with your module and with your documentation as well. Because if you have someone who is really experienced, maybe they say the documentation is too low level or too high level. So also, if you develop a module which is really easy to use, it cannot do much probably, right? And the more customizable your module is, then it's also maybe difficult for people to use it, actually. So the sweet spot is probably somewhere where the orange or yellow dot is. So you should try to cover like 80% of the use cases, but don't try to cover special cases. Yeah. Also, as I said before, you shouldn't reinvent things that you can find on the internet. So always think like, okay, I have this module. How can I actually help navigate the processes of my company? How can I help the engineer navigate my ecosystem? Like, do you have Entra ID? Do you have a special logging solution they have to integrate with? Do you have a special API gateway the applications will have to integrate with? And very important, make your modules open source as inner source. So don't hide them behind the wall. Only developers can see the source code. Always make sure all of your engineers can see the source code. All right, so how can you do this on your own? The first step is to identify the most reoccurring migration scenarios you have. For example, you might have a lot of Oracle databases. So in this case, you should make sure that you cover Oracle migrations, of course. Then, when you have your first project to actually migrate something, you will want to already, during this migration, consider building a reusable module. So not every project will have to do the same in the future. And then you have to check in and see if it actually worked out. Because if you develop all of these modules and no one actually uses them, it was for nothing. So you have to evaluate if they are actually used and if they are effective in your migration. Then the second part is you are confident that your modules actually make sense, so you can write all of the documentation, all of the runbooks that your projects need. And these runbooks contain like the project planning, all of the architectural information, and so on. And when you did all of this, then you will have a migration pattern. So it's a lot to do, but in the end, it's worth it, I think. And now Alex will give us a glimpse of the future of our migration program.
Thank you, Eric. Oh, it works. Okay, what has been achieved so far? Let's take a moment to reflect on what we have achieved so far, and it's quite a bit, I think. First and foremost, we have a complete and reliable migration roadmap. We call it our backlog. Every IT portfolio has a clear plan and aligned with our lifecycle triggers and end-of-life timelines. Responsibles are defined, and we are no longer guessing, we are executing. Second, we have made real progress in that case. For example, we have reached an on-prem footprint reduction of 25% since defining our cloud-only strategy. And in combination with that, we have a very high compliance rate for our cloud solutions, and we have reached nearly 100% of our cloud compliance rate. And I think that's a huge win for both security and governance in that case. And finally, we have established an efficient and scalable migration approach with our defined cloud building blocks, with the derived migration patterns in combination with our architecture as code in that case. And that led us to a significant simplification of our cloud migrations, of course, and to speed up our security approvals as well. And these results showing us that we are just not talking about a transformation, we are delivering it. And that's a very cool progress from our point of view. And what will be next on our cloud adventure? First, we will going full throttle on the implementation of our cloud migration roadmap. No detours, no scenic routes, and just a clear path to the cloud with milestones, KPIs, and so on. And speaking of legacy, we are also planning the replacement of our mainframe workloads. We are just on it, and it's planned that we will finish the migration by end of 2026. And we are also accelerating our cloud adoption in our subsidiaries around the world, and especially for central services, because cloud transformation isn't just a headquarter thing, it's a team sport. And of course, we are continuing to expand our migration patterns as well, in combination with AI-supported migration methods, which are currently running in our actual PI planning, and we are optimistic that we can use something of that very soon. That's why our road ahead is exciting, and we are ready for it. And yeah, let's take a last look on a cloud solution, which is very good to see on your desktops everywhere. And that's why I've bring to you a short demo of our, it's always the same problem here. Sorry for that.
Nimm den. Guck, Alex, nimm den.
Nimm den, ja.
Der ist besser.
Now it should work. Yeah. That's our Porsche car configurator, which is live on our Porsche website. And this tool allows us or our customer to design their dream Porsche, down to the stitching of your seats in real time in stunning 3D. And what's behind the scenes? It's powered by Amazon EC2 G5 instances, which delivers high fidelity, real-time rendering and writes in your desktop browser. And whether if you are configuring a Macan Turbo, like you can see here, or a Porsche 911 GT3, the experience is very smooth, responsive, and visually immersive. You can open, close the doors, you can turn it around, you can switch between daytime or nighttime, and zoom in, zoom out, and choose your rims, your dream color, like you can see it in a real world. And I think it's a great example how cloud technology isn't just transforming our backend systems, it's directly enhancing the customer experience in that case. And honestly, who doesn't love seeing their dream car come to life in photorealistic quality in that case? And if you are more interested in that technology, please go over to the expo and right now to MHP. They have the configurator directly on the screen, and you can check it out. And now we come to the end of our presentation. I don't know what and with that live demo, we have reached the end of this cloud journey together. And of course, that's not the finish line, it's just a checkpoint. And the real race continues in our teams, our projects, and roadmaps. And I think our message is quite simple. Cloud transformation doesn't have to be overwhelming. Right with the right patterns, the right people, and a little bit of horsepower, it can be actually fun. And if you ever feel stuck, just remember, even a 911 needs a good pit crew. And thank you so much for your time. And keep in mind, let's keep building, let's keep learning, and let's keep dreaming. Cloud only, of course. And Verena will take over. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, you two, for that very interesting presentation. For the ones in the audience, please don't forget to check out our new offering on the European Sovereign Cloud. So come by Hall A1 and check out the new offering if you're interested. And yeah, thank you all for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to rate our session in the mobile app. We'd really appreciate it. Have a nice rest of the day, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Good.